That concludes general questions. We turn now to First Minister's questions. Our first question from Jackson Carlo.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister confirmed this week that she wants not just one referendum next year, but two. Now, given she's ignored the result of the last two, why would anyone believe she would behave differently this time round?
First Minister.
Well, I'm rumbled because I want the people of Scotland to be able to escape a Tory Brexit that will damage our economy.
You know, I'm starting to wonder if these generic soundbites are just added into these done-to-death speeches as a means to distract people from the following claim made there. Voting for the SNP to escape a so-called Tory Brexit to its logical conclusion, and realise that it's yet another paper-thin-lipped falsehood. You know, if the Tories obtain a majority, and hypothetically speaking, in this time frame the SNP obtained their referendum, a vote for independence whilst the UK is still a member of the EU will still culminate in Scotland having to leave the bloc. Just as they'd have to, anyway, as part of the UK, if a so-called Tory Brexit ever came to fruition. So I failed to understand just what sort of scenario they insist we would be escaping in the event of voting for them.
It will damage our economy, damage our society, damage the prospects of future generations. I want Scotland to be able to escape years and years and years of further Tory wrangling on Brexit. And yes, I want the people of Scotland to have the opportunity to choose their own future.
I say that she wants to give people in Scotland the right to choose. Yet if there was a second referendum to which independence prevailed, there doesn't seem to be much of a choice on offer in relation to whether or not we would then go back into the European Union after that fact. No, because Thin Lips has made that choice for you already. As was the desired outcome when they campaigned for the People's Vote bullshit for the best part of 2 years. The same would be true if their attempts to stop Brexit in the end had turned out to be successful. The right to choose our own future would never have been a topic of conversation had the EU referendum result gone helmet head's way. And because it never though, she's made the choice for you that an independent Scotland will do everything and anything it can to get back into the European Union at all costs, because that's what it's all about. And whose choice is that? It's not your fucking choice. It's Nicola Sturgeon's choice. Giving the people a right to choose. Claim I don't recall her saying this time last year, but hey-ho.
And I'll seek to persuade the people of Scotland in that
I do nothing other than peddling falsehoods and BS, like you've been doing for 3 years. Tell me something.
Choice to choose independence so that we can build the more prosperous, fairer, more equal Scotland that I believe we are capable of being. And I can't understand why anybody on any of these benches would not want exactly the same thing.
Well, that's great. But it seems apparent to me, as far as I'm concerned, that either you can't understand the difference between independence and EU membership, or in fact it's all an act and you deliberately misrepresent to pretend to not understand. I don't really know which one's worse at this point.
Jackson Carlo.
Interestingly, the one thing the First Minister didn't say there was that she would behave any differently if she lost next time round. And she's always confident she's going to win a referendum. The track record shows she always loses. Yep. And I'm asking because I'm just not sure the First Minister has thought through her big double referendum promise. As she keeps telling us, she would ask Jeremy Corbyn for a referendum on independence and demand it's held next year. And we know too that she would support Mr Corbyn's plan for a second Brexit referendum also to be held next year. Yep. Now, First Minister, clarify for me a simple question on timetabling. When is all this supposed to happen? Both referendums on the one day or on different days? Which vote would come first? Indie-ref, Euro-ref, which?
First Minister.
Well, my priority, and I can't believe Jackson Carlo hasn't actually cottoned on to this yet, he should maybe listen a bit more. My priority is to give the people of Scotland the opportunity to choose independence next year.
And why does it have to be next year, Sturgeon? Care to share? Why do these people seem to be incapable of admitting the truth and instead go on these little mini tirades, these mini tangents, totally obfuscating from the reality of the matter? The idea of having a choice in our future is predicated on a fucking mandate which specifically states that the government should have the right to a referendum in the event of circumstantial changes, such as being dragged out of the European Union against our will. And we haven't left Europe, meaning that they have no grounds to call for a second independence referendum. This is all nothing other than fantasy politics to a degree, and they are sitting there with their fingers fucking crossed, that either a hung parliament comes back or Corbyn decides to play ball. Failing that though, of course, they are, to a degree, somewhat saved from any blame that would be coming their way, as they've managed to convince people that Westminster needs to give them permission in order for them to fulfil their promise. So in the one breath they stand there and they tell you repeatedly, day after day after day, and have been doing so for the best part of this month alone and last month, about how they're going to give the people of Scotland a second referendum. And then they seem to leave out the permission element of it, you know. It's remarkable. They're trying to get everybody to vote for them. Any means necessary, trying their damnedest to ensure that they obtain as many votes as possible, only to then see their request denied if it's Boris Johnson that gets back in, for example, you know. And of course Helmet Head gets to stand there and feign ignorance. She didn't break any promises. Oh no, she had every intention of fulfilling her fucking promise. It's Boris Johnson that screwed it up. The Tories at it again. Ah, yeah, pull the other one.
But Jackson Carlaw is also mistaken when it comes to past referendums, because he also might conveniently be forgetting this fact. In the 2016 Brexit referendum, I campaigned for Remain. Actually, memory tells me so did Jackson Carlaw. And Scotland voted to remain in the EU by 62%.
Because you told them to, you thin-lipped little fucker. I mean, you didn't just go from losing a referendum in 2014 to subsequently obtaining a record level of seats in the following 2 elections because of your presence alone. There had to have been some underlying reason for the surge in support. The influx was blatantly made up of independent supporters, and Sturgeon knew that herself. Hence why she was quick to pump out her "Why independent supporters should vote to remain" this Thursday article in video alike, just days before the referendum, to which they inevitably did. You know? I mean, she stands there, relentlessly touting this figure of 62%, all the while knowing that apart from on the paper, it's nowhere near an accurate representation of Scotland as a whole. It's only 62% because of her interference. Yet she uses it as some argument, as a point prover.
That's the referendum result I want to see honoured. The question...
What the fuck? The referendum wasn't about Scotland. The question quite clearly asked us whether or not we wish to see the UK leave or remain within the European Union. You know, there was a time I would have put this down to being your run-of-the-mill far lefty, but what makes this all the more worse is Helmet Head knows exactly what she's fucking doing right about now. You know, she tries to make out that she's the Scottish voters want, but yet conveniently leaves out how she got them to do what she wanted initially. You know? For ignoring votes. You'd have happily ignored other people who had independence in mind if the referendum result had been different. But as things stand, you continue to ignore a million Brexit voters in Scotland.
For Jackson Carlaw is why is he so willing to ignore how people in Scotland voted on that question?
Jackson Carlaw.
You heard it from the First Minister there. Her priority used to be education, now it's independence.
No, it's not. It's the European Union.
And I'm not surprised the First Minister can't answer the basic question here, because frankly none of it makes sense. Not only is Nicola Sturgeon going to demand a second independence referendum be held next year, as well as supporting a second Brexit referendum, she's also telling people that she's going to help form what she grandly describes as a progressive alliance with other parties across the UK. That's the same UK, if we follow her rightly, that she hopes to leave weeks later. Now, I'm intrigued. Can the First Minister explain how you can hope to form an alliance with the same people you're planning to walk out on?
First Minister.
I think Jackson Carlaw has probably confused himself with that question as well as...
Oh, banter from Sturgeon. Just pristine banter from the thin-lipped wanderer. How humorous. What a comedian Sturgeon truly is. Wow. Great to know that if politics doesn't work out, there's always a place for it. Be live at the Apollo or some shit. Ed, chopping and changing her standpoint, 1 minute trying to stop Brexit first and foremost, then it's the people of Scotland have a right to choose, etc., then contradicting herself by trying to stop the UK leaving the European Union, then jumping back to Scotland having a right to choose, etc. And one thing that's been apparent for a good portion of the time wasted by Helmet Head and the Rainbow Unicorn delegates is there's been that overhanging cloud of contradictions and hypocrisy that's followed them everywhere they fucking go. Can't even bring themselves to acknowledge that if they don't manage to obtain a referendum by the end of next year, they've got no mandate anymore. You know, they can't even bring themselves to admit that. They will give you every excuse conceivably possible to try and justify why it has to be next year and not a moment after, disregarding and ignoring the simple fact of the matter to have a mandate as things currently stand. And whose fault is that? The people of Scotland have a right to choose. Well, you should have thought about that, should you not? That she's been trying to stop the UK leaving the European Union, so if her independence referendum was ever granted later on down the line, if she failed to win, it wouldn't matter. Or there's the other possibility that this is all leading to the eventual breakup of the UK, with Brexit stopped somewhere down the line in that process. But it's all ending up in the European Union.
Of the population. But can I say, firstly, Jackson Carlow asked me what my priority was between different referendums, and I made clear to him, and I'll do it again, my priority is to give the people of Scotland the opportunity to choose independence.
Yeah, that's great.
Secondly, perhaps Jackson Carlow...
Nothing to do with 2021, of course not. Oh, no.
Carlow might reflect... Perhaps Jackson Carlow might reflect on this. If referendums are so dreadful according to him, why did David Cameron, the Tory Prime Minister at the time, foist a Brexit referendum on Scotland? And
because Scotland's part of the UK,
and thirdly, yes, I would want to be part of a progressive alliance to lock Tories out of government in Westminster.
Because you expect to be treated with dignity and respect, and you expect your demands to be respected. But yet you sit and cry about Scotland being dragged out of the European Union against its will, yet see no issue whatsoever with trying to stop the UK leaving the EU. You see no issue whatsoever with showcasing yourself as a party intent on stopping Brexit, bragging about trying to oust the Tories, etc., to stop Brexit. You know? And what for? Because 62% of Scotland voted to remain. You can't see the double standards. You're quite prepared to put a fucking communist into Westminster, just so you don't have to admit to your voters that you're a liar.
Why? Because Tories wreak misery and havoc. It's a year today, presiding officer, since Theresa May presented her Brexit deal to her cabinet, unleashing a year of chaos and division at the hands of the Tories. Welfare cuts, austerity, pushing more and more children into poverty. No right-minded person across this country would want anything other than an alternative to that Tory misery.
Well, speaking of alternatives, you know, Theresa May's deal, the perfect excuse to set the wheels in motion towards your circumstantial change. You know, that circumstantial change that's in your mandate that you require before being able to have the right to a second referendum. But instead of that, they voted against Theresa May's deal. Like, they would have voted for Theresa May's shitey deal. Especially when you hear Helmet Head come out and say about a month or two prior that there was no shortcuts to independence. If there was, she would have taken it. Well, you had one staring at your face. Theresa May's shit deal. You know? But you chose to vote against that.
Jackson Carlow.
I see we're back to our shouty megaphone inclusive speech making, First Minister. All this is complete nonsense from you, but helpfully, your colleague and close ally, David Linden, last night did clarify matters. Because he revealed even if the UK stayed in the European Union after a second vote, the SNP would come up with yet more reasons for a grievance rematch on independence anyway. So after Indy Ref 2, it would be Indy Ref 3, then Indy Ref 4. Everyone knows we'd be doing the Indy Ref forever. All the grand talk of alliances is just a nationalist game. Unlike some in this chamber, the Scottish Conservatives aren't buying it. We'll stand up for Scotland's lifetime decision to stay in the UK. Isn't the real question here why she and Jeremy Corbyn are refusing to do so?
First Minister.
Presiding officer, Scottish Tories have never stood up for Scotland in their puff. And we've seen ample evidence of that over the past 3.5 years since Scotland voted to remain.
And why did they vote to remain? I mean, it's just unbelievable.
European Union, and that vote was ignored and has been ignored every single day by the...
Oh, pull the other one. Short memory under that bowl cut. Along with a dwindling shred of self-awareness, it seems. You know, the court cases, the ban bill, incessant demands for a people's vote, all they've been successful in stopping Brexit. Or if you prevent the Tories from getting in with your so-called progressive cancer cell alliance, and you stop Brexit as a result of, then you've effectively trampled over all the voters who voted to leave. But that doesn't matter, because it's what Nicola Sturgeon has chosen. It's Nicola Sturgeon's vision she's got going on, and we need to all trot along.
Conservatives, but I want to put Jackson Carlaw's mind at rest on one thing. I believe Scotland will vote for independence when it comes to Indy Ref 2, so we will not have to worry about any further occasions. But let me be absolutely candid, because I can't believe Jackson Carlaw or anybody else is in any doubt about this. I support independence for Scotland.
Do you know, why do these people need to keep coming out and reminding us of this? It's the expression, Bidel's protestive too much. You know, the fact that the European Union's membership takes precedent over independence, and independence is somehow being reduced to merely a stepping stone in theory to leave the UK to then join the European family of nations, as touted by Thin Lips, really just shows the stark contrast between the SNP of old and this fucking embarrassment.
And yes, I do want Scotland to escape a position where we are having our futures imposed upon us by Boris Johnson.
Well, you've got no mandate as things currently stand, so good luck with that when you boot.